So what I want to talk a little bit about right now is process, right? Let's use GNEF for example. So we're going to have to do a poster on April 30th. And so GNEF, like another conference or another area or another symposium, basically there's usually a call, right? There's a call for you to come and submit something because we want you to make a poster. And so typically what you have to do is submit an abstract. An abstract is really an abbreviated version of whatever project, QI project, whatever research study, whatever paper you wrote. It's a very short abbreviated version of that. And so what my poster, well, what I want to say is my abstract that you have here is what I had written before my poster was created. So I submitted this as basically a synopsis of what I had done, and then it was accepted by the conference, and then I developed it into a poster. And so this is 239 words that basically outlines what did I do? And so the next step might be, well, how did you know to write this? And so the fortunate thing is that for most conferences and different places that you'll be presenting, they provide you bullet points of what you should be writing and what they are looking for. So in this version here, you notice everything is together. I haven't abbreviated or I haven't outlined anything out. So page 1 is the English version. And if you scroll down a little bit, page 2 is the Spanish version of this same document. This is the English version. I've had it translated into the Spanish version. If we scroll down a little bit more to version 2, this here, sorry, Nicole, at the end of this page, this is the same document, same information that I had in that first page, but now I've actually broken it down into each section. And so here, I'm just providing a little bit of guidance of what information should go into each section. So for example, significance and purpose, right? People might wonder, what do I know what to put there as it relates to my capstone? In significance and purpose, you're looking at for significance, why should anybody care? This is the question that you're answering. Why should anybody care about my topic? What is the broad overarching impact? And that could be the number of people it affects. That could be the cost that it has on our healthcare system. That could be the number of providers or health systems implications. When you think about significance for your capstone, what you want to think about when you're going through kind of, your capstone report and your final capstone document is highlighting, answering the so what. Why should I care? So you want to start by highlighting kind of those sections. And right now, this is just really an exercise for you to start training yourself on what to put in the poster. So it's okay to highlight a bunch of text because the ultimate goal is when you put it on the poster, you're going to be condensing it down into short bullet points. So you're answering your significance, my so what. And then the next thing you're thinking about is, what is my purpose? Why did I decide to do this? Why was this important to me? Why was it important to my particular country? Why was it important to my particular context? That is what purpose is asking you to answer. So again, you can go back to your capstone proposal and highlight a few sentences there that answers the purpose of why I'm doing this. If we scroll down a little bit more to the next section, methods, that's asking you to answer, what did you do and how did you do it? In my case here, what I did, my design was an integrative review. Where did I get my data from? Those 7 databases. What did I decide as inclusion, exclusion criteria? Those are listed out there. Now, I'm giving you this concrete example, but it will be different for your capstone. It will be different for the research study that you're doing. But just trying to give you something concretely to help you kind of organize your thoughts as you're thinking about, what am I going to put into this poster? And how am I going to organize my thoughts? So then you go back to your capstone report and you look at, okay, what did you do? What's my methodology? Highlighting that. And how did I do it? Highlighting that. Scroll down a little bit more. The next thing I'm going to think about is my findings and implications. What does that even mean? My findings are my results. What did you find from the work that you did with your capstone? And then implications are like, what are the effects on other subject matters? Or what were the effects on my particular system? And so in the case of what I was researching, you know, my implications were looking at like human resources for health development, right? We often talk about we want to have good partnership, we want to be partners, we want to collaborate. But are we really doing that when we look at the partnerships that are currently being written about that are out there? And so I wanted to basically be able to assess, are we really truly talking about collaboration, or are we talking about other things such as dependency or, the power dynamics between recipient countries and donor countries and things of that sort? And then scroll down. Almost done, guys. So then limitations, what were your restrictions? Could it be funding was a restriction? Could it be I didn't get to impact as many people as I thought? But why? So thinking about what limited your ability to be able to maybe get to the outcome that you were looking for. And as I wrote there, what were the restrictions and parameters that were in place that may have limited, the generalizability of what you have found or what you have done? And next is future research, right? What other areas are still outstanding that you think would be of interest as a follow-up from what you found? Or what would be other areas that would be important to look at in relation to your topic? And then last but not least is like acknowledgments. And as Katie mentioned, it's really providing, acknowledging or giving a shout out to anyone or group that may have supported the work that you're doing. It could be your funders, it could be your colleagues, it could be your mentors. But more than not, it's professional acknowledgments. We all love our families, we all love our spouses and our kids, but this is not the place to be putting that type of information. It's much more professionally aligned and professional kind of colleagues and groups and organizations and things of that sort. One thing to note, depending on the conference that you should also look out for is conflict of interest. For example, if there are specific donors who are contributing to your work, it will be important to call that out. I tend to see that more in oral presentations, but it is something to note. I'll give an example. You go to a conference on infectious diseases. And let's say, for example, one of the big sponsors of that conference is a pharmaceutical company. And that same pharmaceutical company is also funding your work. So it's important to acknowledge those things. It doesn't necessarily stop you from doing your work, but it's important to acknowledge that up front because there are times when if you are receiving money from certain funders or donors and you are trying to do certain types of work, you can see how that can be a conflict in some regards. So just wanting to be mindful of that. I'm going to pause for another second there and see if we have any questions. Feel free to keep this document, use it, keep it as a reference. So just wanting to also, provide that as a resource for you all as well too. Yuli, go ahead.
Hola, buenos días. Bueno, buenas tardes. Tengo una pregunta. En cuanto a las citas bibliográficas, si se va a presentar un abstract, hay lugares en donde no especifican qué tipo de bibliografía quieren. ¿Cuál es el formato que más recomiendas para poder citar en los abstracts?
So general practice for abstracts and posters, you want to use little to no references at all. Because number one, you have limitations on the amount of words and space that you can use. So my I guess best practice or recommendation would be to use as little as possible in terms of references. Now, for example, in the case of my paper here, in the poster, I acknowledge the reason part of my significance is there's 7.2 million healthcare providers that we have a shortage of. So that's a statistic, like that's from WHO. So what you can do in that case is you can either have a small box, and I don't have references here, but you could have a small box. And so where you see it says 7.2 million global HRH shortage, you could put almost like, is that a superscript, but a little one at the top? And then somewhere at the bottom, have like a small reference tab that has that number one and what that reference is very small. Does that make sense?
Sí, muchas gracias.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
What of in a case where you conducted the survey
Mhm.
and at the same time you have about four other um, data you collected, meaning four graphs with the survey.
Mhm.
I think how that means you have more than 5 or 6 things to paste on the poster.
Yeah, so I think it was more a question of, again, what is the most value added to the poster, right? So I had to decide what I was ready to cut out and what was too valuable for me to lose. The other thing is also recognizing what is most appealing to your audience. It's easier for someone to look at a pie chart or a graphic or a photo rather than reading paragraphs of text. So I think it's figuring out what's the biggest kind of uh value add, what is the message you want to convey, and what's the best way to do that. And so for me, it was also getting feedback from other people, right? This final version here probably went through 20 versions before this one was actually finished. And even now looking at it, I still see areas where it could have been improved. So I think it's also sharing once you get it to a point where you're like, okay, I'm okay with this. Let me have somebody else look at it. Because the more that you keep looking at it, the more you're going to start to miss some of those areas that it could be improved just because you're used to seeing it. So I would say get it in a position where you're ready to share and then start getting feedback from other people. You know, they might say to you, Patricia, this is okay, but I think it actually would make more sense as a picture. Or do you have some sort of pie chart, graph, or anything that could help with that? And I would say don't forget things like Canva and graphics and different things to incorporate. Not too much, but enough to break up the text a little bit, because there is a nice balance between actually having some text, some white space, and then also, you know, some pictures, some graphs, other things to kind of shake it up a little bit. I'll just note really quickly when you're actually presenting this, right? Not in a virtual space, I think that's different, but more in a physical space. Um, Couple of things. Number one, it may be helpful to have like a short version, like a one pager of your poster that people can take in case they can't stop by your poster. I think number two, it's important to remember that there are also other presenters around you. I think, yes, we want the audience and we want members of the public to come and see your work, but also don't forget to look at the people that are right around you because oftentimes you are clustered with people who either have similar interests, have done similar research, and may also genuinely be interested in your work. Poster kind of presentations sometimes can be awkward because people are walking by, they're not really stopping at your poster. So, you know, you kind of want to just make sure that you are ready to answer questions as much or as little. And that you're also just kind of, you know, positive, optimistic about it. All of you are the experts on your QI projects or whatever capstone project that you have done. So working on that confidence and being more comfortable speaking, whether it's virtually like this or in person with a group. Because remember, at the end of the day, you are the content and subject matter expert on each of your projects. No one knows it better than you. So show that confidence when you're presenting your work. Stop there. Yuli?
Sí, gracias. Ayuda mucho todos estos consejos que estás dando. Gracias, Melissa. Tengo una pregunta. ¿Tienes alguna como sugerencia? ¿Tienes sugerencias de plataformas para poder crear estos pósters o dónde podríamos generar aparte de Canva?
The one thing I like about Canva is the flexibility on Canva, where you could do it like a PowerPoint, but you could also do like an infographic, right? So I think I would probably need to do a little bit more research on what's out there right now. And then also with now artificial intelligence, I think things are just very open. So I would say, you know, for the sake of simplicity, I think you can't go wrong with PowerPoint in terms of if you just need something to go in and still have it look good and still have it look great. I would say PowerPoint. The other thing I would mention is when all of you are preparing for conferences and things, reach out to your Marcoms teams. See what support you can get at your site to be able to also help have it look visually appealing. So don't I think discount that the resources and support that you are where you are. Nicole, yes, I was gonna say Nicole can probably give us some more insight. No? Oh, never
No,
mind.
no. I thought you were gonna say Nicole McNose. I just was also gonna jump off of what you said. And note that if you do have access to the graphic design platform Canva, I love that interface because it actually does allow you to create something in Canva and then make a version in PowerPoint. So say, you know, you're able to design something in Canva and you want it to be a PowerPoint version. You can, you know, I can definitely show people how to do that. It's pretty simple. But the caveat that I will give is that once it's converted into PowerPoint, sometimes the formatting of your layout is a bit off. And so I would just recommend don't like, you know, click the button to transfer it to PowerPoint and then just submit it to somewhere. Like make sure to check the version that is in the PowerPoint format and adjust the formatting accordingly, because that's something that I've experienced is I've created templates in Canva and then, you know, converted it to a PowerPoint and some of the stuff is a bit off, but it's pretty, at least from my experience, it's easy to reformat things once you've converted it from Canva into PowerPoint versus the opposite way. So you can also, actually, you can also upload, say you have a PowerPoint document and you want to transfer it to Canva, you can also do that. But that is a bit, PowerPoint converting to Canva will provide for more layout reformatting. It's just a bit more clunky. So things are all over the place when you convert it from Canva to PowerPoint.
Yeah, I mean, I encourage each of you to kind of take a look at the poster and take a look at the document that I sent you, so you can kind of see how to refine and really get down to some bullet points. As you can see on my poster, I don't have more than maybe 20 words and it's another bullet. If you find yourself writing and it gets to a second line, you're typing a little bit too much. There's a couple instances here where I had to do that, regardless of how much I've tried to reduce and cut back. But you really just want to be mindful of how much typing you're doing in terms of, you know, short, succinct, to the point as much as possible. And then you always can elaborate. Remember that you can always elaborate on things there. So I think, you know, if it's helpful, I would encourage each of you to kind of, you know, look at what I've shared, the longer 200-word version, and then the shorter version of how I broke it down into different pieces. That way you can use that maybe as a way to help with your capstone as you're thinking about, you know, how do I put this into a poster template or a format, and kind of just, you know, just start off by highlighting, answering those questions for each section, and then reducing it, refining it. What's most important? What do I want my audience to know? What has the most impact? And I can always elaborate on what is not on the poster. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, I know you're gonna have plenty of time to kind of work through with Kaylee and Sarah and with the team here on refining your posters. And you know, we've done a big chunk of the work for you by having a standardized template. So yes, you know, remember that this is a template. This is a starting point. You'll see different types of posters in different places, and that's okay. But I think, you know, this is just a starting point, and, you know, we're here. I can stay on for a little bit more if people have further questions, but I can turn it back over to Katie and Nicole. Thank you, guys.